10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the weekly live stream. We're going to be talking about all of the interesting things happening within crypto and more specifically, if Altseason could be closer than what we might imagine it to be. So there's a couple of reasons. I actually talk about several of them in my earlier video today. So I'll be kind of skipping over some of those. If you haven't seen my earlier video today, then I would say maybe go check that out, because that's kind of where I I outlined probably three of the biggest reasons that I think we could be seeing an Altseason today, or not today, but potentially soon. Again, nobody knows for sure. I don't know for sure. These are just based on some of the things that we're seeing within kind of the crypto market. Things we're seeing from a regulatory perspective, things that we're seeing from a financial or an institutional perspective. There's a lot of different things going on here. So I think there's a lot worth looking at there today and talking about. So that's kind of what we'll be talking about. More than anything, I kind of wanted to make this a little bit of like a Q&A type of session, or maybe not even a Q&A, but just more interactive. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on Altseason. Do you think we're close? Do you think what I'm saying is nuts and makes no sense? I'd love to hear kind of all of that. So we'll go through all of that kind of over the next probably 30 to 60 minutes-ish. I think is probably kind of what we'll do. So alrighty. Welcome, John316. Thoughts on CRO? Honestly, Crypto.com's token is not one that I haven't paid attention to it in a little while. I got in, I have the Crypto.com card, I've got all that type of stuff. So I'm definitely familiar with kind of with the token, at least at a certain point. But recently I haven't, just because the dilution for a point was a little bit of an issue. And then from there, we also had some of those like burnt tokens, which is kind of strange, things like that. But I do really like Crypto.com's app. I think the app that they've built is very good. And I think that it will continue to drive users and all that kind of as we go on into the future. So I would say I'm kind of more agnostic to Crypto.com as like an investment right now, but from like a reputation or like a brand perspective, I actually really like Crypto.com. And if I was more, I actually just don't really hold any like exchange tokens, but if I did, Crypto.com would probably be one for sure. So I like the kind of Chronos thing that they're doing, and like the that whole ecosystem that they're building. Haven't seen it really take on kind of like Base has, at least in my opinion, but I do think like, Base is having some success. We've got BNB. That's, obviously Binance is kind of like exchange token, not totally, but kind of. And then, I think we could see something similar out of Crypto.com's token. So yeah, yes, agreed. Please smash the like. It does help out a lot in terms of bringing more people onto the stream and getting more people to interact, all that type of good stuff. So like, comment, subscribe, all that good type of stuff. So, all right. Yes. Good evening, Wally Star. Hopefully everybody's doing well. Let's see. What do I think about Bioconomy, Aerodrome, and ICP? We'll get to that here in a little bit. Griffin, XCN, we'll get into all of it. Don't worry, everybody. Okay, is Altseason coming? This is quite literally the question of the hour. And this is something that I think kind of depends on all of the other coins and questions that you guys are asking about. All of it kind of relies on Altseason. So let's have a kind of a quick overview of where I think we are at with Altseason, some of the things that I think were happening, things like that. So let's go and we'll start with that. The biggest thing that I wanted to get into is kind of just how things are going. Actually, I want to pull up Bitcoin dominance as well. How things are going kind of just from like a Bitcoin versus the world type of perspective. So we'll start there. As you can see, let me actually share the screen. That would be useful. All right, cool. So here's the screen. We can see not a great day, and this is followed by not a great month, and then not a great week, and then not a great month. This is pretty much red everywhere. Aerodrome is doing all right. We have a couple here and there that are doing all right, but overall, kind of by and large, the alt market is a little bit in shambles. And so, what we can see though, probably we'll start next with Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin has actually held up very well, while we've seen basically everything else not really do particularly well. Right now, we're seeing Bitcoin kind of in this like descending channel. Bitcoin loves descending channels. For those of you who are not aware, we'll kind of have a little bit of a history lesson going on right here, just for the next couple of minutes. But you can see that Bitcoin is really kind of, it's shot up, and then now it's kind of sitting in this descending channel. This is generally what Bitcoin likes to do. The good news for us, there's good news and bad news with this. The good news for us is that this usually ends with a break up. Again, no guarantees in life in anything, because it's crypto and, we never know for sure. But it usually ends with a break up more often than a breakdown. But a breakdown is, of course, entirely possible. Now, the bad news, patience is probably required here, because we don't know actually how long this will continue on. Could be through the end of the month, could be through the end of the quarter, could be, I guess this is technically the end of the quarter. We'll say the end of next quarter. Technically could be through the end of the year. We don't know for sure. And so what we can see here though, is it does in fact like descending channels. So we can see here's another one. This one is not as perfect as kind of some of the other ones I'm going to show you, but we could see here from January to March, and I guess this was almost the end of April, same type of thing. You could see it following down the kind of this general channel. Again, like I said, not as pretty as the one we're in right now, and not as pretty as the next one I'm about to show you, but it did lead to a breakout. We could see right here, it was fighting against the top end of this channel for like multiple days, even like over a week in a row. And then we did see that breakout happen. If we look back a little bit further, we can see an even better example. This, for those of you who were not around, this was in 2024. This was a descending channel that we could see was pretty clear. I didn't use the same thing. This is a regression trend, but basically you could see from March to like the middle of October, it was bouncing around the same exact descending channel, almost perfectly bouncing at every level. This would have been a fantastic time to be grid trading. I actually did grid trade for a decent bit of this. I was mostly trading Ethereum though, which didn't help too much, but we can see here, that it did the exact same thing, came out and then bounced back up, broke out, and had a really, really strong move back to the upside. So Bitcoin likes to do this. So the fact that we're sitting, albeit right now, in a relatively small descending channel compared to what we've seen in the past, we are nonetheless in a descending channel, and it does appear that we're kind of getting towards the top and potentially even getting rejected as we speak from the top. So something to consider there, just as kind of as far as Bitcoin's showing. So Bitcoin's looking fantastic, which is good. And this is why we're kind of in a tale of two markets. And this is obviously shown by the Bitcoin dominance. We'll pull this out. This has been a multi-year long running trend at this point. Basically since the end of 2023, it's been on this general trend line. Can see there was a little bit of that kind of alt season fake out that we saw in the December-January timeframe. But since then, like, it's actually come back onto this trend line that we have been seeing and continues to run to the upside. So really, really strong trend that is yet to be broken, at least outside of this little exception area right here. And then a couple candles here and there. So that's kind of what we're seeing. Bitcoin, unstoppable. Altcoins getting smashed. And what we can see on the altcoin or the Altseason index, we are very, very deep in Bitcoin season. We've been very, very deep in Bitcoin season, basically almost entirely through since the beginning of March. We've had a couple jumps here and there, the beginning of May and the kind of middle of March being two of the exceptions here. But basically everything else that we've seen from the Altseason index has been pure Bitcoin season. And it's very clear to see this. Bitcoin dominance continues to go up. Bitcoin itself continues to go up. It continues to show strength. But the thing that's interesting here is we can see right now, we haven't really had this sustained level of like total Bitcoin season dominance really since back in 2023 in like the absolute depths of the bear market. Obviously, it was a little bit more of a dramatic dip into Bitcoin season than what we've seen, right now, but still nonetheless very, very similar in terms of what we've been seeing. You can see it's right now, I think this is on the daily. If you look at the month, same type of thing, really kind of pushing lows that we saw back here in 2024. Again, early in 2024, this is when Bitcoin had that like giga pump, and then alts, of course, came right on back. But we can see, this is the type of thing, like there's very frequent periods of time which we are kind of dip in a little bit, but we haven't actually been sustained this low for this long, basically since like last bear market, as I was saying. Again, if we look at the year, same type of thing. We are pushing towards lows not seen too frequently in the past. Of course, 2023 kind of being the notable exception here. And from a monthly perspective, it does actually look a little bit better than kind of what we saw back in this range. So obviously it's good to look at it from different perspectives, but it's very clear to see that Bitcoin season is definitely in full effect, and that it's basically visible by all metrics. So that's kind of what we're seeing here. I think one of the reasons why kind of what we're seeing and what we've seen so far has been somewhat encouraging to me is because what we've really started to see recently, more than at any other time in the recent past, I think in 2024, most notably is when I'm referring to, prices went down like in 2024 and people got a little bit bored in 2024, but there was always this kind of like resounding conviction that like, oh, but this is the Bitcoin halving year. Don't worry, right? Like it's fine. We're all going to make it. But now it's like, okay, well, it's now past, we're in the post halving year, and now we're in like heading into the second half of the post halving year, and we continue to go on and on and on and on and on. No alt season in sight. And so I think what we're starting to see is this is thrown off the path that everybody has been promised over the past 2-3 years or so. And so what we're starting to see is people who are really actually starting to get their convictions tested, and they're really like not sure, how to handle this thing, because we're off the 4-year cycle. M2 is climbing, but Bitcoin's climbing, but altcoins haven't really done anything. We saw that meme coin rotation. We saw a Trump coin. That was the top for sure. All of these different things, everybody's kind of making different claims as to kind of where we could or could not be. And the thing, if you've been a follower of the channel for a while, you probably have heard me say this before. If you haven't, welcome, subscribe, stick around, all that type of good stuff. But if you haven't heard me say this before, I've been very, very, very convinced of this position, which is the second everybody thinks it's not going to happen is probably when it will. And that's why I was slightly skeptical that we would see really any sort of major alt season happen in 2024. And I even, for those of you who are around, even kind of made mention of this in that December timeframe where everything was going crazy. I was like, it feels a little weird because everybody, like, this is what was expected. And it feels kind of weird that would happen, right? Generally, when these types of things happen is when nobody thinks it's like going to happen. And that's when it blows everybody's minds. And then, of course, the fact that it is so unexpected and the fact that it didn't happen when everybody was expecting it is actually kind of what makes the rally that much harder, right? Because it's that much more FOMO. It's that much more like trying to pick the fastest horse. It's that much more revenge trading. It's that much more kind of just like playing into people's emotions, where if everybody's expecting it, it's like, oh, great, I've been positioned this whole time. It's fine. I'll start taking profits right now after a clean 2x or, whatever. So I think that's a huge part that we've been missing, that I feel like we're finally starting to see, while at the same time, we're getting a lot of really, really strong regulatory, essentially tailwinds at our back, right? I mean, again, I'm not going to try and have this be a recap of this morning's video, but a lot of this we talked about this morning with, you now being able to use crypto for mortgages in the US. You can, that altcoin ETFs are coming, and, there, I think, is a 95% probability of approval, at least per Bloomberg, not per me. But there's a 95% probability of approval on 4 different altcoins, or I guess 3 different altcoins and like the index, which that's really, really good news, right? I mean, there's a lot of different things like that continue to keep coming, all while people go further and further down the path of, oh, well, maybe we saw the top alt season just might not be happening. Altcoins are dead, which I think is pretty promising in my mind from that type of perspective. So anyway, that's kind of how I'm getting to this conclusion that alt season is coming. I feel pretty confident and pretty happy with kind of what we're seeing so far. The sadness makes me happy in a weird kind of way, just because I do think that we could see that potentially. So let's go and take a look at some comments here. I know that we've been getting some comments. This is referring to crypto.com's card. Really like their card. I can use my crypto to buy groceries. Yeah, I use it for priority pass so I can go to the lounges in the airport. I mean, crypto.com's card is awesome. I definitely think it is a good product for sure. Let's see. And then USTC Whale says, I'm still expecting like a relief phase of 200 to 300%. And then from September, some start. You might not trust me, but I expect real euphoria in February 2026. Yeah, I think it would not surprise me, kind of late 2025, early 2026, kind of being the range at which most people could be kind of coming in, and the conditions might be the best for it. So I think obviously everybody should kind of make their own decisions and come to their own conclusions here, but that's a lot of what I'm thinking as well is, maybe, but again, there's a lot of people that think that's a possibility too. So maybe it happens this summer, because that would just completely blindside everybody. I don't think anybody would expect something like that to happen this summer. So really hard to say. It's nobody. There's kind of an argument and then a counter argument for almost everything. So it's almost impossible to tell with absolute certainty, what's going to happen for sure. So no, it's not the end. I agree. I'm hopeful that that's the case. Fingers crossed, of course. But we just don't know, so we'll have to see. Really like the pump Say head. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about Say as well, because Say is one that I've actually been looking at doing a video on recently, because it's had some pretty interesting moves. I don't really know too much about it, if I'm being completely honest. That's why I haven't made a video yet. It's just because I haven't really done too much research. I don't know what value I would be able to add, at least at this point. So I do want to do a little bit of research there to kind of discuss a little bit more intelligently about it. But we can, of course, take a look at the chart. But I'm not sure exactly what I'll see or anything like that. So don't miss the ride of RWeave token. I've heard a lot about RWeave. I always get skeptical about giga price predictions, but I do think that we will see some absolutely mind-blowing things happening within the crypto space. Actually, this is another reason why I think alt season is coming. So I'm just going to look this up on my screen really quick, and then I will share it. But we have seen something, and it actually shocks me that more people are not talking about this, because this is something that has honestly just completely blown my mind, and no one is saying anything about it, which is super weird. So let's take a look. I'm just trying to get the right visual on it. Actually, I think I'm gonna use TradingView for it. I don't know why I wasn't doing that initially. Pardon the little bit of a switch over here, but I do think that you guys need to see this, because this is something, again, like I said, shockingly, no one is talking about, but it's just been an absolute insane move here from Circle. Some of you might know where I'm going here, because I have mentioned it a couple times before, but this, in my mind, this is what awaits us with institutions coming into crypto. And no one has said a single thing about it, which is absolutely insane. So, alrighty, I've got it up here on my screen. Let's take a quick look, and then we can continue along here. But look at this chart. Absolutely, and keep in mind, this is like, yes, this is a crypto company, but this is in the real life stock market. So keep in mind, right here at this range, in this like $60 range, Circle was meant to IPO at $30 a share. At the $30 a share, it was 25x oversubscribed. It doesn't even open at $30 a share. It immediately opens at $64 a share. Or actually, no, I guess it opens here. Opens at $68, $69 a share. Dips a tiny bit, and then has just been on a complete rocket ride, topping out at almost $300 a share. This is in the real stock market, where like a 2% move is considered good, right? Now, of course, this is a smaller position. I understand all of that. but this has just been an absolute insane move. Bottom to top, we saw basically a 4x in the span of about a week and a half on a stock, right? And if we start to look at some of its like financial metrics, we can see market cap 51 billion, huge. Volume, insane volume. We look at where's the other thing I'm looking at? PE ratio, 2,600, almost 2,700 PE ratio for Circle. Absolutely bonkers. Just so those of you who may not be super familiar with the stock market, I think the average, well, actually, we could even just Google it right now, but I think the average S&P that's trading is like in the like high teens to low 20s. This is trading at 2,700. Even Tesla, like let's look at Tesla. Tesla is historically known for trading at just stupid valuations for PE. Let's see what they're trading. I guarantee you it will not be 2,700. But let's see. Yeah, 187. So Tesla is trading at 187, and Tesla is one of the most historically insanely high, or I don't want to say overvalued, because I do think that people value Tesla for a bunch of different reasons, but it's been one of the historically insanely valued companies in terms of PE ratio. And we have Circle almost, what is that, 20x that? I mean, absolutely insane moves. And no one has said a single thing about it, which is what's completely insane to me. What this indicates, in my opinion, of course, not financial advice, do your own research, all of that type of good stuff. But what this indicates to me is that there is an absolutely insane demand for essentially like crypto exposure in the traditional financial markets. We can see this with the Bitcoin ETFs. We can see this ish sort of with the ETH ETFs. I think a large reason as to why the ETFs haven't done well is because you can't stake in them. That, from what it sounds like, is potentially changing. So that will be a kind of a nice boost there. But what we're seeing overall is there's an insane demand here for people getting exposure to crypto. And now we're finally starting to get all of these, rails and on-ramps and everything into the crypto space. This is insanely bullish. And I think this could be kind of the thing that kicks off an alt season. Because again, keep in mind, kind of hearkening back to the video that I made this morning, we have a whole bunch of altcoin ETFs coming. If we see similar demand for what we're seeing out of things like Circle and some of these other types of IPOs that we've seen, could be nuts, right? I mean, we might see insane amounts of value flowing into these ETFs, which of course pump the prices. We have to keep in mind, we've seen, I think a couple $100 billion of inflows into, or maybe it's, I don't remember exactly. Don't quote me. It's been a while since I've looked it up. But TLDR, we've seen a bunch of inflows into Bitcoin in I think it's the hundreds of billions, but that could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe somebody in chat can check me on this, but we've seen a ridiculous amount of inflows, and Bitcoin is a $2 trillion asset. If we look at some of the smaller ones, I think, Cardano has a pretty high chance of getting approved. Even Solana. I mean, Solana is not small in crypto by any means, but we look at Sui. I think Sui had a 60% chance of getting approved. They currently are at a $14 billion market cap. If you see $10 billion flowing into that coin, that is an insane amount of buying pressure flowing into that a coin of that market cap. Now, of course, we might not see that. I don't think we should set the expectations there. But what I'm trying to say is you don't need hundreds of billions of dollars to flow into crypto to see some absolutely mind-blowing gains happening, particularly through these altcoins, if the ETFs get listed. So I think that there's really we're seeing the demand already in real time. We're seeing the fact that the regulatory certainty is kind of opening up a little bit. The Genius bill, stablecoin, just got passed. We heard that was a precursor for a lot of the nation's largest banks to be getting into crypto. There's a lot of things happening here that I think are going to be very, very, very bullish long term. And so this is why I think, while we're also coupling that with kind of, I would say, peak FUD and disillusionment and fear and all this type of stuff coming from within the altcoin space, this could be something that completely catches people by surprise and blows their minds. So I'm very, very bullish, probably more bullish on alt season than I have been. But again, you never know. It is the world of crypto. We could be pushed out a couple different years if the kind of conditions on the ground and some of these macroeconomic conditions change. So we'll just have to see, and we will, of course, kind of keep up with it. So let's see. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. I'm getting behind on some of them. So let's see. Yeah, because of Bitcoin. Oh yeah, okay. We're talking about Arweave. Yeah, Arweave. Yeah, I think there's a lot that could do particularly well, particularly with ETFs. And if we see some ETFs start to get listed, I think it's going to be a mad dash for all of the ETFs that are at all possible to get listed. Luis, welcome back. It's been a minute since I've seen you around. It's good to see you, and I'm glad you're back. Watching. It's Luis has been with me from the very start. So Luis always deserves a shout out whenever I see him in the stream. Cool. Hey Mohammed, how's it going? You're our resident ICP bull and bear on basically everything else except a couple ones, which I always appreciate your interesting takes. ICP max $25 this bull run. ICP is a really interesting one, and I actually do. I like the ICP community because there is some wildly different takes. Of course, you have the natural bears that happen in any community, but I think that it's ICP has some wild takes, and I think it's just because we really don't know. Like, I think the tech is good enough. It's just the chart looks absolutely atrocious, and it just depends on if we can, if we can make it past that. So we'll have to see. I don't hate on anybody who says ICP's max $20, $25. I also don't hate on anybody who's like ICP's $100, $200, $500. I could see both. I think it really just depends on kind of how certain things play out. So, I'm kind of fairly agnostic there. I don't like to get married to price predictions too much. Let's see. Caspa, smart contracts, bridges, stablecoins. Yeah, Caspa is an interesting one. I like Caspa because I think from a tech perspective, it's cool. I think it does some interesting things. It's kind of like the Bitcoin 2.0. I don't think it'll ever take over Bitcoin just because at this point, Bitcoin kind of has it's got the brand, so to speak. But it is doing a lot of really cool and interesting things. And I think Caspa's biggest issue right now is it was kind of a victim of its own success. People saw what it could be and kind of like went nuts with it. And then they kind of realized, okay, well, from a technical perspective, there's not really a lot to do with it right now. And so there's been kind of the chart has had some struggles while they've actually been trying to actually build out some of the capabilities that a lot of these modern chains have kind of for all intents and purposes. So let's see. Yeah, there it is. Caspa to zero. I appreciate it, Mohammed. I always love your wild takes, but let's see. Yeah, I do think Caspa will do well, just kind of based on what we're seeing here. Let's see. We're gonna chill with the comments. Let's see. Cardano is a nothing burger. One thing I'm interested to see here's another thing. So one of the big things with altcoin season that I'm trying to kind of contextualize or figure out how this could potentially work is usually to kick out any sort of alt season or alt rotation or something like that. You need a little bit of like a, kind of like that first push to get there. Right. And so I think there's a couple of different things that could happen. I think these altcoin ETFs could be a really great push. I think seeing some absolutely insane valuation from Bitcoin, Bitcoin hitting 300, 400, 500K, I think would be nuts. I think Bitcoin hitting realistically, I think kind of 150 to 160 is probably where it'll end up. I personally don't think that's that inspiring of a story to tell. Like, yes, it already hit six figures, which that's great, but that's not like, I remember in 2017 specifically where we saw it go from like $800 to 20 grand in the span of like 3 months or something. Like, that's insane, right? Going from 18 grand to 150, obviously in fantastic and incredible returns, but over the course of 2-3 years, it starts to sound a little bit less cool, right? And so you kind of need that spark. And I think the thing that's different now that people haven't maybe really calculated in is we've seen kind of these just absolutely nuts valuations and these nuts like gains happening from Bitcoin. And I don't know that we're going to really be able to see that too much anymore just because it's so big. Like getting Bitcoin to 10x right now would take trillions and trillions of dollars to do. And so we need a different type of spark. We kind of saw this in early March. I don't think the macro conditions were correct because we were still in like a high inflation, quantitative tightening, like all this type of stuff, type of condition. But what we saw is that like this can happen through other means rather than Bitcoin. We saw this through Solana. Solana did fantastic. We started to see a little bit of a mini alt season flowing through Solana. Solana did well. Then we saw Solana NFTs do well. Then we saw kind of like the Solana, or I guess it was more like Solana, and then it was kind of like the Solana apps. So think things like, like Jupiter and what are some of the other ones, Radium and Meteor, and all these other ones, like their coins all of a sudden did really well, and then everybody was converting to Solana. We saw Helium and Render and a whole bunch of different ones, and then after that we saw the Solana NFTs do well, and then we saw meme coins kick off after that, right? So we kind of saw the whole alt season cycle play out on Solana specifically, kicked off through means other than like Bitcoin just going nuts. Obviously Bitcoin went up, but I personally at least didn't consider the gains super inspiring. Now the Solana gains were in fact super inspiring. And so I think that that's another route that we can look at least into the future of how we kind of see this kick off. And so anyways, kind of going back to this Cardano comment, I think that having essentially the midnight airdrop being one of the largest airdrops to happen probably ever. I'm also kind of interested to see from a technical perspective how they do this, like getting midnight into people's Bitcoin wallets and like a lot of this type of stuff. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how they kind of arrange this, like what Charles Hoskinson has said. But if it's a really successful airdrop and people make a ton of money from it, then we're going to see this whole kind of new like wealth creation effect. And now people are going to feel rich, they're going to have money, and then they're going to go look for the next crazy thing to 100x or whatever from there, right? And so I do think that could be the, a kind of a spark or that push that maybe would push us into kind of an alt rotation or maybe even a full-blown alt season if the macro conditions are correct. So something to think about. We'll have to see how Cardano does. I think it'll be interesting. So let's see. What do you think of Rio and Sky? I'm not super familiar with Rio. Obviously there's so many things always coming out and always happening. I kind of have to pick and choose. But Sky is an interesting one. Sky's I think that's the transition over from, what is it? It's escaping me. It's one of the like big liquid staking ones from Ethereum though. I can't remember what it is. It's gonna bother me. Somebody in chat help me out. But basically it's like a migration essentially, right? And so I think Skies is interesting. I think Ondo is interesting. So here's a hot take that I've always had with RWA. I'm not sure that I'll be right on this, but I would also be surprised if it did actually play out like we expect. Now, of course, if we hit an altcoin season, everything's going to go up, right? And so things will go up purely on narrative alone. I come from kind of more of the traditional finance world. And so I think I have some skepticism of what we're going to see, from RWA. I think personally, there's no reason, like essentially what is RWA doing? It's essentially making illiquid assets more liquid. Who owns basically all of the illiquid assets in the world? Banks and like pension funds, right? Like BlackRock's and State Streets and all those types of people, right? So who does RWA really actually benefit? Banks and pensions. So why, like, I don't really understand the argument that like banks are just going to kind of like give up what they effectively have a captive market on and just be like, yeah, sure, Ondo, like take all of our illiquid assets and our exotics and like do stuff with them. I would love to see that. I'm a little skeptical. Maybe this is just because I'm like cynical of banks more generally, but I'm a little cynical that like all of these institutions that basically, like, they've got hundreds of thousands of people who work for them. They basically have infinite budget. They've got all this type of stuff. I don't really see, I don't know. I just don't really get the argument where they're like, oh yeah, like, we'll just onboard to XRP or Ondo or whatever. Like, I'm skeptical. I would absolutely love to be wrong, particularly because all this stuff is, like, it's all private too, right? Like, why would they want to do this on an open source blockchain? I feel like they would create a permissioned blockchain to do it. And I know some of these are kind of working on that, but that's my opinion. You can agree with me. You can disagree with me. I'm not even sure that I'll be right about that. That's just kind of like my kind of cynical take about, private markets and stuff like that. So, Mohammed, thanks for the super chat. I appreciate your conviction in basically everything going to zero. So, but yeah, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Zebek to 07, this ball run would be sick. I think Zebek is cool. I think Zebek is one that, like, obviously it's a little bit of a dangerous game to be holding crypto long term, but that is one that I would feel comfortable-ish holding long term, just because it's already mostly diluted and it's actually trying to build a real product. That to me, I think is interesting. What I don't really understand about the utility of some of these coins is, like, well, what do you do with it? Because so for example, with, like, the Zebek token, you can pay in Zebek. Okay, great. But you can also pay in USDC. Okay, great. Well, I'll just do that. Like, I think that's probably the route that a lot of people are going to take. And so unless there's, like, some sort of, like, buyback and burn, or even just buyback option more generally, I'm wondering how some of these are going to do kind of in the longer term. So, let's see. Sky's already doubled. Yeah, I mean, Sky's the token rebrands are kind of a mixed bag. Oh, I think it's Maker. I think Sky is like the rebrand of Maker essentially. But token rebrands are a pretty mixed bag. Sometimes they do really well. Sometimes they don't at all. One of the good examples of not doing well at all is Polygon. Polygon rebranded from Matic to Pol and, like, basically went down only. So token rebrands are not a guarantee that things will go up, but yeah, no, Sky has done quite well in the recent past for sure. So, Luis, yeah, thank you very much also for the super chat. I super appreciate it. Houston, Texas. Yeah, that's right. Hopefully work and life and everything has been good. I know that you're, I think you said you've been busy lately doing work and stuff. So, really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. Let's see. Yeah, rebranding of Maker. Yep. Sorry, Wally, I'm just slow to get to you. Let's see. Yeah, I agree. Zebek is a hidden gem. I mean, honestly, like, that's Silence. That's kind of why I was saying I don't have, like, a super strong conviction in my take there, just because I do know that, like, the team is pretty good and pretty interesting. I'm just, I don't know why, like, Chase and Bank of America and Citi wouldn't just, like, get together and be like, hey, let's just, like, go build a private blockchain. Now, maybe there's just, like, they'd have to build the team, and who knows, like, there is a real chance that maybe, like, they just buy Ondo or something, right? And, like, they make that type of strategic acquisition, which is possible. But yeah, I think banks doing anything involving RWA on an open source chain, I think is just, I think that's nuts. I don't really think that's ever going to happen. I would love to be wrong again. But we know how banks make their money. C 2008, C 2000, all this type of stuff. Like, they fractionally reserve, they, kind of mixed around different pots of stuff and things. And, they've got their exotic instruments. They try and package and sell to people. Like, they've got all this different type of stuff that they do. So I don't imagine that they would want that to be in full display of the public. I think it'd be better if it was, but I just don't think that that's realistic. So we'll see. This is one of those things that I'd love to be wrong on, but this is just kind of a take that I have. I don't necessarily, like, I'm not totally willing to die on that hill per se. So XRP is purchasing Zebek. Is this true, or is this Is this just what you want to happen? I would love for it to happen. I think that'd be great. But yeah, I've not heard of that. I think it could be kind of interesting. Especially if XRP is trying to kind of own the like payment space. Zebek could be, a really interesting kind of inroads into like that payroll payment space specifically. So we'll have to see. But yeah, Wally, I'll have to take a closer look into Sky. I think all of the DeFi stuff, realistically, I think has, I think it all has potential. I do sometimes wonder how we get from kind of point A to point B, kind of meaning like how banks essentially exist because they get paid to manage risk, right? I put my money with them. They don't just want to hang on to, like, it's not free to store my money in like a secure way, right? And so like they essentially get paid to arbitrage it and like not lose their shirt. And the way they do that is they have to be really, really good with underwriting risk and making sure that, like, if I take Cade's $100 and go lend it to John for, $120 and, counting principal repayment plus interest, like, you need to be pretty confident that you're actually going to get most, if not all of that $120 back. Because if you don't, when Cade comes back asking for his $100, you're not going to have it. And that is a problem. So that is something that I think is, this is the thing in DeFi that I kind of wonder about a little bit, is if people don't kind of really respect the skill or the nuance in that. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I do wonder how we could do that without like having, major default risks that then kind of, with leverage, and then the whole thing kind of comes crumbling down, similar to like what we saw out of like a Luna. So, again, I'm not like, I know that I'm by no means a DeFi expert. I met a lot of people. I actually went to at ETH Denver 2 years ago. I went to like a DeFi only type of event. And I will tell you, like, those guys are nuts. They really know the industry and have built the industry in an absolutely insane way. So I'm not at all saying that DeFi can't get there. I'm just saying that DeFi is a very, very immature industry. Again, this is me speaking from somewhat ignorance on Sky specifically, but just knowing that the DeFi industry in general, I still think it's relatively immature. So, but yeah, so. No, not a problem at all, Wally. I will do some more research into Sky though, because that is one that has kind of caught my attention. Sky and Say are probably the two big ones. Just kind of taking a look, you can see here, I'm looking at the crypto levels of just all the things. Actually, let me keep it this way. Oops, this way. Sorry. Sky and Say are probably the two big ones on this list here that I haven't done as much research into as I would have liked. Those will probably be my next two big ones. Obviously, I want to continue covering Onyx Coin and Zebek and ICP and Caspa and all the ones that I kind of already like. So it's one of those things where it's like, how do I add in, some of these other coins to talk about without kind of like, reducing the frequency at which I'm covering the others, which I don't want to do. So you might just start seeing more videos from me. That might be the solution here. So, we'll have to see. But I think those are kind of the two big ones. Another one that I don't talk about much that I do really like is HBAR. I think HBAR is cool. Sui is cool. I always kind of come back to Sui now and again. The Sui community's kind of been asleep or something maybe recently. My Sui videos haven't done particularly well, and no one's seemed to be particularly interested in it, which is fine. Things kind of come in waves, and Sui's been kind of a little bit on the downtrend recently. But I know Doc's really bullish about it. He's been talking to me a little bit. We Telegram a decent bit, so he was talking to me about Say the other day. So, but yeah, that's one. Also, for those of you in the chat, just while we're on the topic of Doc, Simple is another one that I've been really, really pleased with. Let me go pull up the Simple chart really quick, and we can discuss that one too. Again, this is a micro cap, so if you are not well versed or comfortable with these types of coins, you should definitely stay away. But Simple is one that's done actually really well, and I've got a decent bit of optimism for it. So again, full disclosure, I do own Simple. I'm a holder of it, all that type of good stuff. Just so anybody's not trying to think I'm trying to pump my bags, which of course I am. But no, realistically though, like this is such a small market cap that I think I feel a little bit conflicted. One, because it's small and it doesn't take a lot to move, but also two, it's small, and so if it reaches the potential that I think it could, really, really bullish, honestly. So let's talk a little bit about Simple just for 1 second. For those of you who are interested in hearing a little bit more about it. Also, while I get this pulled up, you should go ahead and subscribe, like the video for sure. Get more people in here. We can chat and all that type of good stuff. But okay, cool. I've got all the stuff and things loaded up. So let's just take a super quick look. While we start, let's see. I'm so glad I got in the pre-sale of Simple. Yeah, I got in on the pre-sale of Simple as well too, which was good. I think I'm probably going to be buying more soon. Is kind of what my thoughts are. But again, obviously not financial advice, make your own decisions, yada, yada, yada. But you can see here, this has been the Simple chart so far. So, I mean, it kind of chilled for a little bit and then had quite a decent little move back to the upside. It's kind of on a little bit of a move back to the downside. This, of course, was during all the possible World War III, Iran, all that type of stuff. So, all things considered, not bad, not bad at all. So yeah, it's done well. So a couple of the things that I've really been kind of keeping a close eye on. Let me see if they've got it here or if it's on. It might be on Dex Tools that I was looking at it, but they have a holder count somewhere. Oh, right here, 483 holders. So you can see there's 483 holders. When you're looking at micro caps, this is something that I'm always taking a look at, is we want to see a consistent increase of holders, in my opinion. We can see a very large amount of liquidity compared to fully diluted market cap. So that's really good. It is, of course, fully diluted. There's no unlocks or anything like that to be happening. So pretty good view of the chart. If you are interested, of course, you can go check it out. And then you have the Simple AI Twitter account as well, or the X account. Still relatively small, actually very small, as you can see. Link to the website, all that type of stuff. But you can see, this is the thing that's really kind of actually made me more bullish since the pre-sales, because whenever you get into the pre-sale, granted, I knew Doc before, so I was like, I know Doc, he's a cool guy. He probably does good stuff with everything that he does. So I'll do it. But ever since, I've been very impressed. The team ships constantly. It's crazy. You can see they're always doing they did an AMA. You can see, they're doing their posting. I think there was one that came out. More utility. They've got their custom DApp builder. Every couple of days, they're coming out with something where you can just see that they're kind of adding more and more utility into the Simple ecosystem. So that's why I'm pretty bullish on it. Of course, I think teams that build, particularly in the AI space, AI is super, super red hot right now. So that's kind of why I'm looking at it. This, to me, is kind of like a moon or dust type of play. So again, for those of you who are not super, super, super risky traders, I would probably just wait and wait till it gets to be a little bit more of an established project. Maybe it has a little bit of a larger market cap, things like that. Of course, not financial advice. You need to make your own decision. This is why I'm trying to be very, very clear about what makes sense in my mind, just based on some assumptions that I could be making about various various requirements or expectations that certain people might have from a risk to reward type of perspective. So unless you're very, very confident in losing all of your money, I would say, probably stay away. That's kind of how I look at it. I only invest in all of crypto, basically, money I'm comfortable losing. So this is not to say anything bad about Simple. This is just, I think that's just the proper risk management and risk mitigation that you should be taking. So anyway, I think that's ICP Shark, but in cool stuff. Hello, welcome. It's nice to have you on the channel. Yeah, holder count is going up quite nicely. I also love the doc. It's been great. Me and Doc are pretty close just because we both started our channels at relatively the same time. Our channels are relatively the same size. Believe it or not, I'm not sure how many of you watch both of our channels, but it seems to me that both of us talk about very similar topics, but we approach it in completely different ways, which I find actually really cool. Like I enjoy watching Doc's content, and I think he attacks the problem from a super interesting perspective that I normally don't initially think about. And if he has a video that like I'm thinking about making a video on soon, I will generally try to like just put it on my watch later and watch it after I've recorded my video, just because I don't want to like I don't want to like muddy that contrast of like how we've kind of had this like really interesting combo of we both talk about interesting things, but in quite different ways that they both feel kind of unique and valuable in their own ways, which I think is cool. So let's see. Yeah, he probably is. Yeah, it sounded like they had a long couple of days yesterday, or a long couple of days today and yesterday. So let's see. What do you think of Cityscape and his war on Definity? Honestly, so I'm not super read up on like the current details with this, but I mean everybody's got a war on Definity at some point, it feels like. And I think like I don't know, I need to read up on like the specifics of what's going on right now at least, but um I think like just speaking kind of at a high level, again, kind of pulling back from this specific comment, but like at a high level, I think there's a lot of people who criticize Definity for doing a lot of different things, and like some of them warranted, some of them not, and some of them are just pure matters of personal preference. So I don't really take too hard of a stance one direction or the other. I think a lot of it's just kind of, you know, people are passionate about the project and they've got a strong vision for kind of what they want to see happen to the project. And I'm cool with that. Like that's not anything I've got a problem with. So, you know, overall though, I think it just, you know, this comes back to people and their investment timeframes, their investment criteria, things like that. You have a group of people that, you know, have a certain vision about how some things should be done. And sometimes if they're not interested, then they don't, you know, they disagree and they tell the world about it. And, you know, I don't see that as particularly a bad thing. So, let's see. I know Tyler. Yes, I do know Tyler Hill. Tyler's a good friend of mine. So yeah, I like them. I like him. Actually going to see Sam this weekend, so I'll be hanging out with him, my financial friend. If you know anybody, or if anybody knows him or follows him, you should check him out. He also does good content. He does particularly great content on Bitcoin. He's kind of like he's my guy for Bitcoin. He's got a really interesting perspective on a lot of stuff as well. So yeah, that'll be fun. But yeah, I know a couple of different people in the space. You know, try to talk to them, get their advice, things like that overall. But what do I think about the Polmatic or of Polmatic, given that we are in cycle lows? So basically the how I view Polygon right now, honestly, is a little similar to ICP. I think what Polygon is doing is they've got a really interesting thing that they're trying to do with this whole like ag layer thing that they're doing. No one seems to care, you know, and I think it's a little perplexing. I don't understand really quite why no one seems to care. I think it could be that just no one cares about Ethereum kind of more generally right now. I think some of that optimism is starting to come back. But I think a lot of it is, yeah, people just don't really care about Ethereum right now. And, you know, with that, why do you care about interoperability within Ethereum if you don't care about Ethereum generally, right? And so that's kind of my views on Polygon. I think if we start to see some of the optimism coming back into Ethereum, then I think we could maybe see some moves happening from Polygon. But I definitely do feel like it's very much like a beta play. This is one thing that I would say is, and this is actually maybe a good kind of lesson for kind of everybody within the crypto space, is I view this very much as like kind of levels of risk, right? And so if you have like levels of risk essentially increase as you go further down. So for example, If you are wanting to get involved in crypto, your best asset is probably Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin is probably going to outperform the majority of the assets the majority of the time. And it's probably like the safest kind of like index play. Now, of course, the only thing superior to that would be an actual index itself. But we don't have one yet. They're coming soon, maybe. So, maybe we'll see, and that might change. But right now, I think that's kind of like the first layer of risk. The second layer of risk after that is picking a particular chain. So ETH versus Sol versus Cardano versus Polkadot versus Cosmos versus whatever. Okay, well, now after that, you have kind of the app level below that of, I'm going to pick, I don't know, some DeFi app on Ethereum. Okay, great. Well, to take it even kind of more extreme than that, you go to like kind of some of the like, for lack of a better word, let's call it meme plays on particular chains, right? So for example, you look at a particular meme coin on a particular obscure chain. Not only do you need crypto to do well, you need that chain to do well, and then you also need that particular meme coin to do well on that specific chain. So this is almost like 3 layers of inherent risk involved with a decision like that. And so that's kind of how I view Polygon and Matic. Is like right now, ETH, it's like, the first lever has to open to get to the second lever, and then the second lever has to open to get to the third. Right now with Polygon, we're just like the first leverage hasn't even opened yet. So if no one cares about ETH, it doesn't make sense that a project making ETH more usable would do well, right? And so that's kind of how I view that type of thing. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that was useful. If not, I just wasted 3 minutes of all of our lives or whatever. Let's see. I follow you both and love the different approaches. It's good to have different insight. Yeah, that's why I kind of like intentionally will like try to stay away from many of the content creators that I like if I know I'm going to create a video on something like that. Just because I don't want to kind of like muddy my opinion and like kind of fall into this like echo chamber that I feel like happens a lot in crypto. So I try really hard to kind of isolate myself from that a little bit. Yes, 48 Hour Sam. That's the one. Yeah, no, I really like Sam. I'm super excited. I think that's going to be fun. What are my top 5 crypto investments? At this point in time, Bitcoin, Ethereum, like a huge gap. Actually, no, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, like decent sized gap, ICP, decent sized gap, Solana. And then after that, I don't know, probably like I have a bunch of like altcoins on Bitcoin because I'm pretty bullish on that. I don't know if I had to pick one specifically, what it would be. But also those are down horrendous too. That is also one of the things of like, it's the extra levers of risk as you go into certain things. The Bitcoin narrative took off for a little bit, but it never really sustained itself. So that, it just kind of just didn't play out. So that's why I only invest when I'm 100% willing to lose. So let's see. Where do you see HBAR in the distributed ledger versus other blockchains for use in TradFi versus ETH or Sol? Honestly, I think something like HBAR will make more sense than ETH or Sol. I could be wrong. I maybe I know Solana is really trying to make that push. I don't know that I see ETH kind of ever getting there. But yeah, I don't really see ETH getting there. Solana, I think maybe, but I do think HBAR is a good one. Like Ondo could be a good one. Again, XCN could be another good one. We kind of are getting smaller as we go further down. But yeah, that's kind of how I view it. Let's see. My financial friend. I think he's great. I think there's general risk in advertising within crypto. It's very difficult. I've seen this kind of happen over time to a lot of otherwise really good people. It's hard in crypto, right? I mean, like obviously, particularly for people working in crypto full time, like you kind of have to pay the bills somehow. And usually the best way to do that is advertising. You don't have control over the projects that you advertise. Think about, watching a commercial on TV or on YouTube. If that if that product is a scam or they never deliver, or Google Ads, for example, it's not Google's fault, right? So I think that's kind of how I view it. Maybe my opinion has changed a little bit, Lee, since since I've been in the space for a little bit. I get it. But I also I think there's other factors there. And that's why it's so important. Like you have to do your own research. You have to make sure that you understand what you're investing in, because it's very, very important to make sure that you are taking responsibility, because just because somebody talks about it doesn't mean they own it and it's their most highest conviction project ever and all that. Like it could just be that they're getting paid to talk about it, and a lot of people say exactly that. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, that's kind of, I know it's kind of a bit of a sensitive situation. So off to bed. All right, Wally Star, have a good evening. We'll do this next week. Feel free to tune in, same time, same place, or same-ish time, same place for sure. But yeah, not a problem. Happy to help. I'm glad you guys are finding it useful and valuable. So, Silence. This is a question that I love, and this is a question that I've answered many a time in different videos. So I actually have a video specifically. I don't reference ICP specifically because I have a lot of ICP fans and they usually hate me when I say anything negative, but that's just the reality. There's cons with every pro. But I think it's interesting because I don't actually believe that relying on tech alone will work out. I think you have to have marketing. I think marketing is completely essential. How are people going to know to buy your product if no one even knows it exists? Or maybe even more than that in ICP's situation, how are people going to know to buy your product if A, they don't know it exists, and B, when they do find out that it exists, they're in crypto. And so the first thing that everybody does is look at the chart and they see, that's a terrible plan in my opinion. So that's kind of how I appreciate, or that's kind of how I view it. Yeah, I mean, I really do. I like the tech. And honestly, the whole reason I have a position in ICP is I'm expecting either some sort of viral product like caffeine to kind of do the talking for them, or we need to see radical changes in their marketing plans. If we don't see that, again, not to throw FUD or anything, but I don't see a great reason to own the project. A lot of people talk about oh, well, but the tech is so much better than X. Okay, well, yeah, maybe, right? But also at the same time, if nobody knows about it or thinks it's a rug pull because it's gone down so much because of all these various manipulative tactics or whatever, it's tough. It's a tough situation. And so I definitely believe in ICP. I hope that we will find, we will find kind of that thing. But I'm also fully prepared for it to go to zero because the marketing has historically been quite atrocious. So we'll see. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, of course, Cordell. Happy to always answer questions. I love kind of hanging out and doing more of an interactive type of show. So really appreciate it. Bugatti also appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see. One thing I hear a lot is that they are targeting big businesses rather than retail. And that could be true, right? Let's actually go look. I actually have a perfect example for this, because I think what you're saying, I hear that a lot and I want to believe that as well. But it's a decentralized distributed project. We know how to check this, right? So let's go check it. Let me go find it. I like the new thing that ICP's done with their dashboard, but it also is kind of tough because it used to be really easy to find cycle burn rate, but now I just can't for whatever reason. I know it's a me problem, but I just can't. Here it is. Okay, but here we'll check it right now. So here, I mean, see it for ourselves, right? I mean, obviously we saw a really this to me was absolute, this was gold. I was okay, it's working, even though nobody's hearing about it, even though price is meh, this is what we want to be seeing. This is the fundamental value accrual that we're seeing within the ICP ecosystem. This, however, not so much, right? And so this, I think, is kind of the problem, is if we actually saw institutional adoption and institutional usage at a high level, then I would completely agree with that take. The problem is though, is yes, we did see that kind of for a second where it went absolutely parabolic, but then since then it's really kind of died down. And now, of course, we're sitting at about 160 billion trillion or 160 billion cycles per second. And this is like still 8x what we were before this major jump. So I'm not like super mad about it, but it is something that we need to always kind of consider is like, aside from price, how does the actual fundamentals of the chain look? And, transactions are down. We know they can handle more. So we know that that's probably just less people are interacting right now. You can see this clearly from the chart, right? I mean, it's fairly clear to see that, transactions are down. Now, of course, people are, bearish and people have gone away. I get all of that. We continue to see internet identities go up. That's good. Cycle burn rates down. Not great. Canister smart contracts go up. That's good, right? So it's like we're seeing some good things, but we're also not seeing all good things like it used to be. And that's the one thing that's kind of tempered my enthusiasm just a little bit. But of course, as I've mentioned, like I think all eyes are on caffeine. Depending on what happens with caffeine is what will kind of happen. It will pretty radically temper my opinion, I think, if I can speak English. Alrighty, so I wonder how many people are trapped in ICP still when it came out hot in the FTX days. There's some manipulation, wasn't there? Yeah, and that could be another thing too, right? Is like people are just permanently bearish on it because they're down like 99.9% from when it came out. There are claims of manipulation. Everybody calls me an idiot whenever I cast doubt that there could have been. However, I have yet to see actual tangible proof other than trust me, bro. And I don't count that as actual tangible proof. So, it would make sense to me that it was manipulated. And I don't doubt that it was, but I also don't believe that it was either. I think it's one of those comments where if people want to believe it, great. If they don't, great. I just kind of sit in the middle. I just have never nobody's ever showed me, yeah, this is how, and this is why. No one's ever walked me through it. And frankly, I don't think it matters. Like, is your project good or is it not? I don't care if it was manipulated. I don't care if it doesn't matter. Like, is it good or is it not? Do people want to use it or do they not? To me, it's a pretty simple, it's a pretty simple plan. And then of course, you can always do the token rebrand too. If you want to stop carrying around the baggage of a bad chart, do a token. Everybody does it. We've seen 4 token rebrands in the past year. So there are options to kind of go out and do something else here. So let's see. Curious if I've ever watched Crypto Futures channel. He's another honest guy. Would be cool to hear you guys do a collaboration. I actually have not. I will have to. Is it just called Crypto Futures? Let me know, Michael, and yeah, I'll definitely check him out and see. Because I'd be interested. I'm always looking for good channels and always looking for good collaborations as well. I'm always kind of I really like having that conversation and having it be a little bit more interactive. I think it's more helpful for me, and I also think it's more helpful for the viewers as well. I think it's just a little bit more interactive. You can get some kind of real-time dialogue, some clarification. Maybe you get some extra context that you wouldn't have otherwise because people may not understand it the same way you do. A lot of that type of stuff. So I would love to do that. I think that would be great. So unfortunately, I do actually need to get running. I've got a different meeting here coming up in a couple of minutes. I do still work a real job. So I've got a meeting coming that I got to get to. But yeah, I really appreciate all you guys tuning in. It was a really great stream. It was a fun time. Of course, like, subscribe, comment, share, all that type of good stuff. It really, really does help me out. And I really, really do appreciate it. All you guys are the best. So I will probably wrap it up here. Let me take this quick look from Michael. Crypto Future. Okay. I got a small channel, but a huge Patreon, pretty knowledgeable. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. No, I'll check him out. Appreciate it, Michael. And yeah, thank you everybody. We'll chat later.